Hello and welcome to Veteran Instincts. We're in a whole new post-points update world this week and excited to bring you a game between two players that you may have heard of. Reigning 2nd edition world champion and ex-Nordic national champion Oli Pocknell faces off against 3 times 1st edition world champion, 2-time System Open winner and ex-US national champion Paul Heaver. Hello guys.
Hi.
Hello.
I think we're going to start off here by talking about your approach to the lists. And why don't we start with you, Paul? You've got a load of ships here that we haven't really seen in 2nd edition. Kind of what was your thought going into the game and into the list building?
So this is actually how I typically do post-points updates. I ignore all the things they nerfed because we already knew they were good and now they're less good. And I just look at the stuff that they buffed to see if it's playable. And they brought the Sheik Defender down way down. So he's like 42 points now, and he was previously I don't know who cares how many points he was before. He was a lot of points, and Sabine was brought down as well. So basically, putting this together, it's like I was like, oh, this is like a 4BZ list. Only my B wings have 180-degree arcs and can reinforce. And my Z is an I3 supernatural intimidation TIE fighter. Cool. That seems fair. So yeah, I decided to try it out against Oli.
Cool. And Oli, from your point of view, your world list obviously got hit pretty hard by the points update. And this looks like a kind of variation of it to allow you to kind of still get under the 200-point mark. How does this compare and kind of what were your ideas with the changes by bringing Death Rain into that Vader spot?
So this, obviously, as Paul was saying, this is new territory. No one really knows what's going on. I'm kind of tired of flying the world's list at this point because it's been about a year. So I wanted to try some new things, but I knew that Paul would likely be bringing generics because he likes flying his low initiative, and with a new points change, most people tend to test out new chassis anyway that have gone down in points. And I realized that I could fit a pretty chunky Death Rain in with Whisper and Grand Inky instead of Vader. So I thought, hey, let's give it a go. Let's try out the advanced protons, try some barrage rockets on there for funsies, and see what happens if I throw bombs at people. Obviously, for the Vassal League, this is blind, so neither of us knew what each of us was going to be playing before coming in. Paul was probably expecting me to fly some sort of aces, which is where the tuk-tuks are a really, really good idea with 180 arcs.
You'd be correct.
Yeah. So, and if I'm expecting him to fly some form of like generic swarm to counter aces, I thought Death Rain was a pretty good idea.
Cool. Yeah, it makes sense.
Death Rain's a really interesting addition to the meta at the moment, right? Because he's not quite a hard counter for droid, but he definitely makes droid players have a lot to think about.
Yeah, I was also terrified about having a droid swarm loaded up into me, so that's the other reason for Death Rain.
And I think he came down in points as well, right? So then the advanced protons also came down a point, so you're now not paying a huge amount for that.
I mean, this Death Rain he's got so many toys. So yeah, trajectory simulator, advanced protons, barrage, seismic, proton bombs, and I say only 70 points. Like 70 points is a lot, but with the amount of toys on him, he's a 9-hull monster with 2 actions. He pulls his weight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to see a lot of Death Rain in the coming months.
Cool. We join the game here with the rocks down and Paul's list placed. Paul, looking at rocks, really interested to hear what you are aiming for and what role you're kind of hoping the rocks will play in this game.
I bring the smallest rocks possible with this list, so I want them to play as little a role as possible. So I shoved rocks in corners and just tried to keep them. I think I also put that other one on my little starting area.
Yeah,
So,
yours are the ones on your side.
Yeah. So I put the 3 there on like right near me. I knew where I was going to be placing my ships, so I put my 3rd rock, that little guy. I put him over there because I knew my ships were going to be in the corner that they're in by that point. So I wanted rocks to have as little as possible since Death Rain has seismics, and I didn't want to take too much damage.
Yeah, it works both ways, right? Yeah, the ability to take the seismics out of the game, and also, I mean, the defenders have got decent dials, but no reposition, so you are limited to those moves.
Incorrect.
Taken through.
I have red barrel roll.
Yeah.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Surprised the crap out of me on the first turn by doing one of those. We'll come to that later.
Yeah, it sounds like you should have saved it for later in the game rather than revealing it on the first turn.
Yeah, that would have got me. Like if he's looking for the box, just like wait, that he can do that.
And actually, in terms of setup, Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about the way you set your ships up? Because ordinarily we expect to see sort of things in a box, and they're not. They're all kind of stagnant at different distances. And Sabine at the back, and ordinarily with that sort of faster dial, I'd expect to see them more flanked out. Can you tell us a little bit about both of those thought processes?
Sure. I was going to throw Sabine too far away because she's just going to get eaten by Whisper and Grand Inquisitor if she strays too far away from the Wookiees. And she can go anywhere she wants because she's ridiculous. And as for the Wookiees, why they're not in like a 2x2 formation, mainly because this is like the first time I ran it, so I just kind of threw them down more than anything else. I didn't really think too hard about it, but I knew I wanted to have like a front line so that they can kind of bank together, and then that fourth guy was just like, well, I guess I'm going to be back here.
Cool. And so, Ollie, as we start to see your ships go down here, I think Paul's kind of at least partially achieved what he wanted to. He's got a lot of rocks on his side of the board that he's going to be able to fly past within a turn or two. You know, with those 3 small rocks, it's always hard to get the obstacles to play a huge role. What are you thinking in terms of setup now with your ships and where they go?
So Paul's obviously got himself his nice block set up. So he's got 2 options. He either comes quite fast up the board, and this is where my rock deployment comes in, because obviously Paul wants to keep him out of the way. I dumped these 2 at the edges, this one here and that one there, knowing that that's the best way, first of all, for Death Rain to get a seismic off against a swarm, and secondly, it stops the Wookiees turning in quite so easily. My third one was here because I didn't want to allow Paul to be able to come up the middle. I don't know whether he would have, but if I hadn't put this one here, then there's a definite possibility that Paul would have just deployed the Wookiees up here and just rammed me. So I wanted him to at least go in a corner. With that, if we move sort of through the deployment, I decided that I was going to at least try to put Death Rain opposite the Wookiees, get some bombs off, get some early damage in. As well as that, as Paul was saying, if the threat of the proton bomb can force Sabine a bit further away, then that's definitely something that Whisper can pick on. If Whisper can get Sabine off early, then that makes my life a lot easier.
Interesting. And what's your plan with Death Rain in this matchup? Because he's not built for endurance, right? It's a lot of health, but it's behind 1 agility. So are you just looking to trade him for a chunk of damage into everything? Or?
My plan with Death Rain was to not joust the Wookiees. He can normally get away. He's got the ability to action after he drops a bomb. So my normal opening engagement against the swarm is first turn you sort of play chicken a little bit, and then the second turn or third turn, depending on how the swarm is moving, you do the bomb drop into the boost, and then either do a 3 bank or a 4K, depending on where you think the swarm is going to go. So Death Rain lobs the bomb and then disengages. Essentially, you get 2 good opportunities to chuck a proton or a seismic into the face of the swarm, while probably only taking a couple shields on the way out. The idea of Death Rain in this matchup is to do as much damage as possible, but I think I do that by keeping him alive for longer rather than just lobbing him into Wookiees.
Yeah, it's my feeling as well, but I'm surprised that you set him up where you did to do that. I think the value of the seismic is reasonable.
Yeah.
I suppose the threat of the proton, as you say, forcing Sabine out of formation is the value.
It's basically the bait. I need to set up a flank to win this game, right? Like with the 180 arc, it's super, super hard for Whisper to get around. So I need to get Paul's Wookiees to point at something, and Death Rain is the obvious target. So if I can bait Paul into thinking, okay, I can take the ship off the board, just get 70 points in the bag, then he's kind of got to go for it. And then if I play it right, I can get a real big advantage, just strip shields for almost nothing in return.
And Paul, what's your feel in this kind of list? Is there a ship in all this list that you're looking at as a primary target?
Death Rain's definitely the target that I want to kill. It's like a giant 70-point pinata that my Wookiees want to just whack on with sticks and get those points. And then after that, like I'm just hoping to have enough arcs to catch Whisper, and I'll shoot Grand Inquisitor if I have to. That's
basically. The points value is important here because Death Rain is 70. I have to kill 2 full Wookiees if he dies. So I was definitely trying to keep him alive for as long as possible until it was clear that he just wasn't going to be able to survive.
With all of that, I think what we'll do is wind on and look through the first turn. Paul, here you've got 2 choices really by the looks of things. You kind of either turn away down your board edge or head up and maybe take the Death Rain bait. Any kind of major advantages or disadvantages between the two in your mind?
Oh, I took the bait. Like I was just gonna run straight forward at Death Rain and make him figure out how to not get shot a billion times by all my guys. So yeah, my plan was always to go straight at Death Rain because otherwise Death Rain, I'm just gonna give him a easy flank into all my guys, which seemed like a bad idea. So,
yeah, the threat of advanced protons is real.
Yeah, so you can see this is where I did my first turn barrel roll with KD3 there. And then Sabine just is bailing and going to hang out over here for a little while and see what happens.
And that's kind of as Oli hoped, because whereas the Aciducts can tank the bombs, Sabine really can't.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, Sabine is just going to hang out over here on my deployment area and see what happens with bombs and other nonsense, and then kind of come in afterwards.
And Oli, we see you there, as you said, sort of going towards with Death Rain, and I'll have to see what happens. But normally, I'd worry that was too far forward, and you're going to get caught next turn. But I think you've got 2 things in your favour, which is that Paul's going to maybe think twice about herring down the board edge because of that trajectory simulator, but also the ability to pseudo advanced sensors boost is going to allow you to get a lot further away than you would otherwise be able to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I put a lot of thought into the first term whether or not to do a stop or 1 forwards or 2 forwards. The reason I did the 2 is because I made a very slight deployment mistake. This rock should have been about here. If it was there, then what would have happened is I could have done a 1 forward on the first turn and still hit it with the Traj Sim. But because I haven't played Death Rain in a little bit over a year, I put it a little bit too close to the Wookiees. So I needed to do the 2 forwards to get me a little bit closer. Basically, what I've set up at this point is the game of chicken I was talking about. Both Paul and I know that I can throw a seismic at this rock because this is the target. I'm not going to throw a proton. It's not going to get close enough. So the seismic into the rock is the thing that's going to happen next turn. And it's whether or not I decide to play a massive game of chicken and hit the brakes, like hit the stop on Death Rain, or just do a 1 forwards as Paul stops the Wookiees, because these things now have a red stop on their dial. Or does he dial in another, say, 3 or 4 forwards to kill Death Rain, accepts the bomb, and if I've stalled, then he kills me, or if I boost out, then it's perfect for me. So it's the 50-50 coin flip at this point.
Yeah, and it would have been sort of even more perfect had you set that rock up slightly further away, because it would have meant you didn't have to commit so hard into this idea.
It allows Death Rain to be a little bit safer.
And so, Paul, given that position, how are you thinking about this? Is it that simple 50-50 between do you stop and kind of make him waste a bomb versus go and try and catch him if he's a bit greedy, or is there a kind of third option that you're thinking about?
No, it was definitely the stop, make him throw the bomb, because I mean he's obviously going to throw this seismic. It's going to clear the rock, so then my guys can have a nice clear line towards the center of the board after that rock goes away. And at worst, I take a point of damage on one of my guys. So I was definitely stopping here, because if Death Rain stops as well, then I take a point of damage on one of my guys. Nobody gets any shots. We stare at each other for a turn, and then my guys just do like a 1 forward the following turn, and Death Rain doesn't have any of his tricks because he's stressed. So I'm fine with that too. So either way, like I'm perfectly fine with the stop here. If I went forward, then more of my guys get shot, and he stands a chance of like dodging with, doing his boost and then maybe doing a turn or a 3 bank or something, or like in the worst case scenario, he throws a proton instead, and I go walking into the proton, and he throws himself behind the rock so that he has cover against my shots. I was 100% on the stop here. There was no other choice in my mind.
I think what's really interesting is, for me, if you have a look at the risk reward from Death Rain's point of view, if Paul goes forward and I do the one forwards, then I'm screwed. Like Death Rain dies and I lose the game probably immediately. So realistically, I have to do the 3 bank here. With Paul's 50-50, he's got one that adds risk where he gets hit by like all of his ships with a seismic or a proton, or he has the thing that goes, okay, so there is almost no risk to me stopping.
That was really interesting to listen to, and from Paul's point of view, it's that stopping, there's always going to be an advantage, and the advantage is you take less damage and that rock is out of the way. You know, whereas any other move has a potential, you know, bigger upside, but a much bigger downside as well. So at this early stage in the game, almost kind of why risk that, right? Would just take the definite advantage of Oli being 1 bomb down, 1 less rock on the board, and Death Rain presumably having turned away and run away. And if he's done anything other than that, actually, you know, all the better. So let's see how that plays out. Obviously, no shots this turn.
Actually, the one thing I was kind of surprised by is Whisper's move, because I really expected Whisper to be going like 4 forward and then decloaking forward and going 4 forward again here. The bank in actually was probably the most surprising move that you did there, where I was like, oh, I didn't expect him to be facing the center of the board so soon.
I agree with Paul. The 4 forward would have been the better option just to get further behind the Wookiees quicker.
The Whisper move you did do, though, is it gives you more options there, doesn't it? The 4 forward, you could have still backed off, but had Paul turned down his board edge, it's a harder disengage with Whisper to then kind of get him out of trouble.
True, but I mean, Whisper's so speedy. She could have done it. It's, again, advantages and disadvantages. So if Whisper does the 4 forwards, the advantage is that she can really quickly get behind the Wookiees. If the Wookiees turn at Whisper, then cool, she has probably 3 turns to get back around the other way, so it's not too much of a problem. And then she's the bait, and Paul turns his side open to Death Rain. So, yeah, see, this was really nicely done. Doesn't stress all the Wookiees out. I like that a lot.
Having talked about not remembering the ship had a barrel, I'd also forgotten it had a hard stop, because you kind of, or at least I get so stuck in your head that what it's going to do is either focus to be offensive or reinforce to be defensive, and forgot, of course, that it can reposition. And I think it's something we spoke about in the channel, but worth mentioning again. And perhaps this time it's a reminder for me, is if you go up against something you're not familiar with and you don't see often, take that time to stop and look at the cards and read it and remind yourself of all the things it can do. Because there's already 1 turn into this game, been 2 things that I've forgotten that the ship can do, because I haven't seen one in that long.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Like, I'd force myself to remember the stop, because I did the same thing. I had to look at the dial beforehand, but I forgot to check the actions.
Yeah, and it's easy to do that. So I've a similar story. I played in French Nationals sort of at the start of 2.0, and sort of halfway through the game, wanted to know if an Aztec could block me, and it was the only time before or since that I'd seen an Aztec on the board. And I was like, right, these guys can't reverse, can they? They can't do anything stupid like reverse. And the guy was like, no, they cannot reverse. And I plowed into him as he stopped. And I was like, I didn't ask a detailed enough question there.
Yep. I just wanted to mention the Death Rain decision here. I was reasonably sure that I was in range of 1 of them, not 2. But I thought it was worth taking a shot to reload a seismic and have a threat of a proton bomb for next turn. What I probably should have done is I should just barrel it away and made sure I didn't get shot, but I was being greedy.
Yeah, and I think, the reload maybe on its own was probably not quite enough to justify that decision. But I do think that where you are, the position for the proton bomb, it does at least give Paul something to think about and slow him down. Whisper now maybe doing what you kind of think in hindsight he should have done a turn earlier and kind of heading for this bottom corner on the flank. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was clear where Whisper was going. Just I was given that 1 turn of leeway to see whether the Wookiees would turn in. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, but and I did manage to clip one of the Wookiees with the seismic there, so that was nice.
Yeah. So as we can see here, that first Wookiee, that's number 1, and I believe that's the one that's got Zeb crew. Is that correct?
Yep.
That will become important later.
I was going to say, was that sort of just an afterthought, or because you got the point and it may be useful?
I had a point and there was no reason to have a bid. Yeah.
And then we'll see whether Oli's range judgment is correct. I've got that first shot coming in here. Nice, unmodded hit crit. It's not bad. And double blanks from Death Rain there. So nice early 2 damage into Death Rain there. Always feels nice, doesn't it, to get that kind of
free damage.
Early plink damage in.
And it's definitely like risks that you shouldn't be taking. That was ridiculously close.
Yes, yeah, right, and that could have been a real disaster, right? If you take another 1 or 2 damage here, then that really starts to feel like a bad choice.
And that's the thing. Like it was totally the greedy play. The reason I was sitting there was because I wanted to threaten the proton bomb for next turn, so that Whisper had more time to get behind the Wookiees. Realistically, knowing that Paul is now going for Death Rain with everything, just get out, reset the engagement. Obviously, the standard trap with the seismic hasn't worked because Paul is a good player and he knew it was coming. So it was worth trying. Don't take any damage for it. Go away, reload, try again. As opposed to taking 2 shields here, which is not the best scenario.
And so we're now through and ready with dials down for the next turn. And Ollie, why don't you talk us through here? Because I think, barring Sabine, and we'll maybe talk to Paul about that in a second, Paul's in a nice spot now. He's got his Azatucks in the corner of the board, easy turning as he described. Now that rock's gone and kind of really threatening the whole board within the next few turns. You've got a slightly trickier job in terms of not getting everyone cornered, really. So what's the kind of thought process here for this turn, and what are you aiming to get to, in the next turn or two?
So if I think about my planning here, think about the order of stuff that's going to happen. Death Rain is going to drop a bomb, which means he gets another action. So I'm going to drop a proton here just to make sure that Paul, if he has decided to come in fast just to try and catch Death Rain, again, it's Death Rain has a white reload. There's no reason to not do it. It also allows me to get out of trouble because the curve boost should fit around this rock. So I'll do the drop the bomb, do the curve boost, get a bit more space. Or I think I might have taken a target lock here. I think that might have been what I decided to do. Target lock and then 3 bank. Whisper's decloak. At this point, I was thinking that I might be able to tag Sabine because she is a long way out. So I did a 3 bank here to the left with Whisper, thinking I'm going to decloak this way. And then end up sort of facing this rock with some nice decloak options for next turn. It also means that if the Wookiees decide to sort of trundle up the board for whatever reason and just say, okay, we know that you're going away this turn because there's no reason for Death Rain to stay around. And the Wookiees just do sort of a series of 2 forwards and say, cool, we're just going to come straight at you again. Whisper can maybe cut in through this gap, chase Sabine a bit more. So the 3 bank gives me a few more options for that.
In terms of board space, before we get to Sabine, it looks a lot like sort of Paul is really compressing the board already.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are your thoughts of Grand Inquisitor? Because it feels like the board is about to get very small over the next couple of turns. And it feels like a very brave Grand Inquisitor that's going to turn left and try and get up into this top left corner. But if you, I don't imagine for a second that's what you're doing. But if you do, that's the only way you're going to get anything behind the Wookiees and kind of present a threat up there.
That is exactly what I'm doing.
Okay, fair enough.
So
I was going to say that would be lunacy. What is your plan? But that is your plan.
So the thinking is that the hard one from the Grand Inquisitor here is relatively safe. If Paul decides to come in with the Wookiees, then I can just barrel roll away, and then just go somewhere else next turn. But you've also got to remember that the Grand Inquisitor is the tankiest ship on the entire board here. He can take so much firepower. If he just sits there with an evade and 2 force at range 3, I can quite happily take 3 shots from Wookiees. Like on average dice, he'll probably take no damage. So if there is any ship that is going to try and dive behind and really start chunking these things, because even though they can do sort of the spiral of doom, once the Grand Inquisitor is in close behind them, they can't really get rid of him. So my thinking was, okay, if Paul decides to really just commit and turn in here, then I can do a hard one and I can do a barrel roll. And then if I can get the Wookiees all chasing into Grand Inquisitor, he will last a fair few turns, even with them shooting him at close range. So that gives me time for my 2 real heavy hitters in Death Rain and Whisper to come in and start taking Wookiees off the board. And like as Paul said at the start, the Grand Inquisitor is the one that he wants to kill last. Like he doesn't really want to be dealing with him. So if I can force him to shoot the Grand Inquisitor, then that gives me space and time with which to take Wookiees off the board. So that was my plan with him.
From my uneducated point of view, the Wookiees seem relatively straightforward. I think the 1 bank in, no need to rush anything. That's what I would think, but obviously correct me if I'm wrong. And then Sabine, presumably turning back towards your list and running away from the scary Imperial ships.
Yeah, so Sabine is actually super interesting because she gets to react to where he decloaks. So depending on which way, like if Whisper decloaked left, then I go, oh, Whisper's coming right at me, and I do something completely different with Sabine's move than if Whisper decloaks right, which is what I expected her to do. Basically, the whole plan is Sabine has a couple rocks, has an evade token, is at range 3. Probably Whisper doesn't just kill her for no good reason. Um, and as an extra little aside, because I was curious, I ran it through on the dice calculator. At range 3 with an evade and 2 force against 4 3-die focused attacks, you are expected to take 1.4 damage.
Oh, there we go. So I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, it's still you take like 1 point of damage, like,
and then you're in the middle of it.
and then yeah, you get to where you're going.
Yeah, so it's not bad.
Yeah, but yeah, you're correct. We're just banking in nice and easy. If I get shots in Death Rain, cool. Because the whole idea here is we're going to kind of sweep through Death Rain, hopefully kill Death Rain, and then kind of hopefully sweep Whisper into the corner that Whisper's flying towards. And I'm ignoring Grand Inquisitor. Grand Inquisitor, I don't care about. Might as well not exist. Like this entire game is going to be like, if I get shots on Grand Inquisitor, great. But if I ever turn towards Grand Inquisitor, I've done something horribly wrong.
Yeah, that is absolutely the correct decision.
I think, again, we actually glossed over, but I think if there are people who tend to run sort of beefier rebel lists, just the dials that you set on those wikis at Temple are all a combination of different speed banks in a way that has brought them all together perfectly and cleared stress on 3 of them have ended up with mods. Like, it's very, very easy to gloss over that, but that is like a work of art, right? That you brought the 4 of them all into together perfectly.
Yeah, when you have all 3 banks available to you, having your ships go like flying side by side and then doing 1 bank, 2 bank, and 3 bank, that's the best way to just keep a formation going. It's pretty cool.
We see Whisper moving there, and when you were describing your moves, I worried that he would end up in this position, and actually, I wonder if this is going to cause him problems in the next couple of turns, because your hope that you could potentially decloak to the left next turn and end up in this position here has not come off, right? And now actually, rather than having lots of decloak options, you can only decloak to the left. I suppose you have the option to not cloak, and I suppose we'll see it.
Yeah, that's
the end of the turn here.
If the Wookiees had gone 2 forwards up the board, I think from this position I just wouldn't have cloaked and dialed in a 3 bank for next turn. And then you clear this rock at the bottom here, the big rock in the bottom right hand corner. You clear that one with the 3 bank. So again, you've got 3 decloak options. You can go forward, sideways, or left. So it would have put me in a good position.
Yeah, and I wonder now whether, I think if I was Paul, I'd see that as a bit of an opportunity to maybe catch Whisper in this bottom right hand corner, and I'd be tempted, I think, to maybe even hard turn or commit more into that bottom corner on this next turn.
Yeah, it feels like Death Rain's going to be a couple of turns away from being relevant if you go into that corner. Whisper, as you say, doesn't have a huge number of options to go.
So, 1 shot this turn.
Nope.
At the looks of things.
Not quite.
Nope, just out.
I was hoping to get it.
Yeah. So Sabine doesn't need to worry about whether her evade token was going to be enough. And we're on to the next round. Happy with how things are going so far? Let's start with Oli.
Not ideal. Whilst I didn't expect the straight joust from Death Rain to work, I was a bit frustrated with my decision to essentially take 2 shields. Put me a bit closer to the Wookiees than I would have liked had I not barrel rolled away. I think this turn is probably where I make my first mistake. I was thinking about what to do here, and the principle of 3 ship ace against beef is that you hit them from 3 angles, right? You've always got to have angles. So I think the barrel roll last turn with the Grand Inquisitor was a mistake. I should have stayed there and just played chicken. And what I do this turn with Death Rain is a mistake as well, but we'll get into that when that happens. But this position I think is actually quite good. This is the position I was hoping for. Barring some very slight adjustments, this is absolutely fine. This is probably what I would have asked for on the first couple of turns.
And so I suppose same question to you, Paul, and similar line of thinking to me about Whisper getting stuck in this corner, or with Whisper's maneuverability, is that something that you're not kind of ready to commit to yet at this stage in the game?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to turn all my guys into Whisper and give Deathrain and Grand Inquisitor my flank. But we're going to keep going towards Deathrain because he's just got to go. I can't let Deathrain survive. And he's relatively easy to kill. And then the whole plan after that is hope that I have, most of my arcs still alive and get the Whisper after that. And if Grand Inquisitor wants to just roll on up, maybe I'll get the half Grand Inquisitor or something. That'd be cool.
As a bonus on the way through.
Yeah, but like if Whisper really doesn't want to play and I have to fight Grand Inquisitor, I will. But I mean, I've got to kill Deathrain here. And I was worried about the seismic here, so my guys kind of go slow. They clear their stress. They're just hanging out, like forcing Oli to make choices with Deathrain, and then meanwhile Sabine is just again keeping the rock between, because we all knew where Whisper was going. Whisper only had one option. Yeah. So again, keeping the rock between me and Whisper, having that evade token.
Yeah, and again, I think a real nice example of two things. One, the patience, right? That I think a lot of players there would have been tempted to rush forward to just kind of definitely catch Deathrain. But there's no need to, right? And the more turns you can tempt Oli into dropping bombs and either, losing that option or having to reload, the better. The fewer obstacles on the board you've already pointed out, taking advantage of the fact that things are being blown up. And the second thing, I think, again, for newer players playing a swarm, as I was talking about earlier, setting up in a box, and I think a lot of people tend to set up in that box and then dial in the same maneuver with everything. And that definitely is a way of keeping them together. But you tend to always end up with one that doesn't quite get that shot in the first round. It's just that bit too far back. And on every turn so far here, you can see that your outside Azatuk has gone that bit quicker. So as you're turning, you're not kind of getting everything strung out. Everything is that kind of forward firing line is just as scary now as it was at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, you got to keep rotating who's going faster, or yeah, it's definitely like an art to it. Yeah.
Actually, I think Paul, you said the exact right thing. Right, it's a firing line is what Paul is building and maintaining here.
Yeah, especially with the 180 arcs, it's important.
And so Inky kind of backing out of that.
This is quite important. It's worth noting that both as you go through the game, you start to get a feel for what your opponent's going to do. It was clear here that Paul was just attempting to slowly shepherd Deathrain into the corner, which was fine, which is the reason that I didn't drop the seismic this turn, because I was scared of the 4 forwards, but I didn't think it was going to happen. And this is where I let the threat of something get the better of me, as opposed to doing the correct move. The correct move here, I believe, was a proton drop into a boost. Proton to keep the rock here, by the way. So this rock in the middle, this is a really important rock right now, because of the fact that the Wookiee's going to all have to sweep past it. It's a perfect opportunity for a seismic. So if Deathrain had stayed where he was, done a 1 straight boost, and then done a 4K, he would have landed about here, which means that a 1 forwards next turn would have landed him. Even if the Wookiees do a 4 forwards, he would have only been in range of a couple at range 3. And then he would have been guaranteed to nail down a proton, range 1 proton torpedo on something, as well as a bomb drop into the center of them, while providing Whisper the perfect opportunity to come in with a flank here. Instead, what I've done is I've decided that I'm going to turn away to try and get a bit more time.
So yeah, I think that is the kind of balance between putting Deathrain in a risky situation for kind of this turn and maybe for the turn after, but having those threats coming from different parts of the board, versus Deathrain being safe now, but not really looking like he's got a good way to get back in and threaten for at least sort of 2, maybe even 3 turns, and be heading towards the same part of the board as Whisper. So we've got a range 3 obstructed shot. Not expecting great damage output here. With the 5th brother mod, we get hit crit, so potential for stuff to go through. But 5 agility and an evade taken is enough.
Yeah.
And Sabine lives through that, and as I say, expected damage with that shot not very high. Paul, given the state of the board now, the interesting thing for me was sort of with you kind of saying that you weren't considering going for Whisper was the commitment to your initial kind of target priority. No need to change things up. You still want Death Rain off the board first because it's the kind of thing that can really punch a hole in your list the quickest. Does that change at all here, or is it kind of a case of just everything's going okay, you're slowly making progress, and Oli's position is getting slightly worse every turn?
Yeah, so it's really interesting hearing him talk about doing the 4K and everything, and going through with all that, because then obviously my guys wouldn't turn next round or anything. They go then 4 forward, go charging towards where Death Rain just K turned into, and then I guess I'll shoot Grand Inquisitor then as the second target if I have to, because the Death Rain and Grand Inquisitor will be right next to one another. But here now, Death Rain's going towards Whisper, who was my second target anyway, so that's just gravy for me. I'm super happy with that. So I'm just going to turn on in towards where Death Rain's going, because Death Rain can't not go into this corner at this point, where there's no way for Death Rain to like turn and barrel roll or like juke the whole thing, and no, you're going into the corner now. You're stuck with it.
Even with the advanced sensors, those 2 bottom rocks have made a real narrow corridor, right? And a medium base TIE Punisher is not agile enough to really do anything fancy in that area of the board.
Yeah, and I actually had an interesting plan with Sabine here. Sabine has a turn dialed in as well, so I'm like, well, either Whisper's decloaking forward and going to like try to just race down my deployment area and try to find someplace good to go, or Whisper's going to like decloak right and just kind of hang out over there and try to get shots from inside the bottom right corner area. So if he decloaks forward with my turn, I can like just do a bank boost and then do the 2 turn into the spot between the little rock and the big rock, and then Sabine's safe. Everything about Sabine's movement is keep Sabine safe from Whisper. That's like all I ever think about is like, just don't let Whisper shoot you, and hopefully eventually I can block Whisper with Sabine. Because once you see where Whisper goes with the decloak, it's usually not too hard to guess what Whisper's move is going to be.
She is. Once you see the decloak, she's super predictable.
Yeah, so it was Sabine being able to react after that with whatever nonsense I want to do with boosting and then doing my move and then barrel rolling. Like that's the whole idea, is I get to react with all that and get you, hopefully.
Yeah, and Lloyd and I don't really like praising other people's play, but unfortunately, I think you're playing pretty well at the moment. But I think one thing that I've been impressed by, Paul, is Sabine there with intimidation. Although she is the kind of most lightweight piece of your list, to get any use out of her, you need her in as a blocker. And I think the way that you have got her close to Whisper without really being ever in any significant danger has been really impressive. I think the kind of selection of hard turns, barrel rolls, keeping that rock, Whisper getting closer all the time, and more at risk from, as you say, Sabine's ability to react to the decloak and get the block in has been really impressive. Let's see how that plan from Paul turns out, and from Oli's point of view, if he can get himself out of the slightly difficult spot that he's got himself into.
On the subject of this here, this is the first time that I was attempting to use some decloak trickery with Whisper. If you decloak to the right, as Paul was saying, he would be expecting Whisper to come in here. So I've actually dialed in a 4 forwards with Whisper to try and get around the flank. But if I'd have gone 2 forwards and then 4 forwards, if you go 2 forwards, it's really clear where Whisper's going. Everyone knows that she's just running for the other corner. And he might have even tried to barrel roll the Azaturks to try and catch her there, or put Sabine in a position to try and just nail the block. Because of that, I decloaked this way, then did the 4 forwards to try and put Paul off the scent of going for Whisper here. This turn, Death Rain got a little closer than I was hoping for. I was honestly wondering whether or not I'd be able to get an advanced proton into Sabine here if he tried to block or set up a good block for Whisper next turn. But he was quite good and careful at getting into that position. Death Rain is not in the happiest place, but on the same side of the coin, he's also got perfect positioning for lots of bomb droppage next turn. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really nicely judged with Death Rain. I've got to say, my Vassal Eye isn't as good as yours, and I didn't think that the hard turn was on after the boost there, but you've slotted her in between those rocks nicely. Taking the focus again, is that kind of judging that you think Sabine is just at range 2 there?
Yeah, Sabine is just at range 2, so I want barrage rockets into Azatux. That was my thinking here. And as I'd already taken a shield off one of them, if I can get another shield off him, then that's crits going into him with a proton bomb next turn. Also, if I can hit that guy with an advanced proton, then it's going to really hurt him.
And actually, Oli, we didn't really talk to you about target priority because there are 4 generics that are basically identical with the exception of Zed Crew. But in terms of threats, what are you looking at? Because you've got obviously a lot of beef here to deal with, but you've also got that Sabine blocker with intimidation.
I honestly, if Paul gives me Sabine, fine, which was why Whisper was sort of fishing. But really, I just need to take Azatux off the table. If I can take 2 off and have 2 aces left, I think I win the game. So basically, I have to trade Death Rain for 2, while Paul is hoping that he trades Death Rain for half or 1.
And we see here the kind of benefit of Paul now kind of really going hard for Whisper and Death Rain is that the Inquisitor has managed to turn in, because of those 180 arcs, still in a couple, but in a much safer spot than he would have been a turn or 2 ago, and now looking like he's going to sort of have the flank for a couple of turns at least. Takes the lock there on that back as a tuck, and as you say, Whisper going full straight forwards, just reclaking for next turn, not going to get a shot from where she is, and not taking any fire anyway.
So this is where I was saying that I made a mistake the previous turn. What I've done here is I've got 2 ships shooting, and they're not shooting the same target. If I'd have K-turned Death Rain, whilst it would have ended up with 2 ships jousting the swarm, I would have been able to get all 3 of my ships shooting on 1 target, and probably with the advanced proton torpedoes, I would have taken off an Azatux before it shot. Whereas in this situation, I'm now going to be doing damage to different targets. I'm splitting my fire. This is not at all what I wanted. I should have just accepted the fact that, okay, if the Azatux are going to be chasing Death Rain as they're clearly chasing Death Rain, just accept it and do as much damage with him as possible before he goes down. I thought I had 1 more turn to get a good engagement here. Paul chose the correct turn to hard 3 instead of doing the 1 banks that I thought he was going to. Because if you have a look, if you imagine the Azatux are back here after doing a 1 bank, it's just out of range of Death Rain, you have the perfect situation because I already have that target lock. So all I need to do is do an advanced boost to make sure Sabine doesn't block me, and then just do a 1 forwards, and I get an advanced proton torpedo into this guy as he sort of slams in. Whisper, decloak, hard 3, Inquisitor comes in. I can take a ship off the board.
That was what you could have won, right?
Yeah, like that was what could have happened. As it is, I've left myself in an okay position, but realistically, it's actually terrible considering what it could have been.
So first real turn of fire coming in here. Grand Inquisitor gets to go first. I presume you're going to spend the force here to roll 3, and rolls 2 hits.
Forgetting to spend the target lock here as well.
I was going to say you're going to save that for later on, but forgetting to spend the target lock, that's upsetting.
I thought you did that on purpose because you were like, it's only 1 damage. I'll save the target lock for later. Like that's what I thought.
Yeah, because I only had the single force, it wasn't a terrible thing to save it till later. But I want to just push as much damage here as possible.
And so number 4 rolls the evade and just takes the single sort of plink of damage.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get Death Rain coming up with the barrage rockets, presumably into number 1.
Yep.
Rolls 2 focus and a hit, and on a 1 agility ship, I expect you to go ahead and spend the focus.
Yeah, I was hoping to keep the focus, but I can't turn down 3 hits.
And then 1 agility, because that's a barrage rocket secondary weapon, but does go ahead and roll the natural evade, which is nice. I always start to kind of feel bad when firing at 1 agility stuff and they're rolling the natural evades. It's it's not what you need. You need to kind of burn these things down a bit quicker, and anything that slows it down is really damaging to your chances of winning.
Yeah, I mean, they do go down quickly. Like essentially, it's like playing against four Y wings or 4 B wings because they don't take reinforced very often anymore. But the 180 arc makes it harder to get those choice shots.
And here we get Paul firing back. So starting with Sabine. With just the 1 hit, but no evade there. And Death Rain takes another shield.
Yeah, I get unnaturally salty when I'm fighting a 1 agility ship and it rolls like 3 single evades at a time. I'm like for some reason I don't get mad when it's like a 3 agility ship getting like 2 evades, 3 evades, but that 1 agility ship getting like the single evade on the single die every single time. I'm like, oh,
it's like, this is not how this is meant to work. It's just not.
In the first Euros, I was flying a Stressbot Y-wing, and I was playing a really nice Italian guy. But on the 11th natural evade in a row that my Y-wing had rolled, he'd basically lost the plot. And I think it was the kind of frustration of that happening, and it was an absolute outrage, combined with the fact that he couldn't express to me how angry he was making it worse. There we go.
So what you're saying is you are just a bad person.
I mean, that was outrageous. It's outrageous. Like, it's never happened again, right? But it was an outrage, right?
Yeah.
So here we get the wikis starting. So hit crit coming in at range 3.
And this is where I get a little bit
evade.
concerned because I was thinking, oh, it's fine. I can take 3 or 4 shots on 7 health, and then.
And then first possible opportunity, the crit goes through.
Yep.
Oof, and a direct hit.
Yeah. So this is where I
definitely suboptimal.
I started looking at just losing Death Rain at range 3, and I started panicking quite heavily.
Yeah, if you lose in this turn, which is looking not beyond the realms of possibility, then
then 4 health, 2 Wookiees left.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yep.
And then hit crit coming in from number 1 here. Better start rolling some evades. So 1 evade at least. And another hit crit.
Yeah. And regardless of what else I've taken here, it's clear that Death Rain is like he's done. Like he's not going anywhere. He can't get out of this. I just need to now make him worth as many points as possible next turn.
Yeah, you're looking at I just want the advanced proton torps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gonna land a bomb, get the advanced proton torps off. Fingers crossed he survives. So down to 2 health. 1 more attack coming in.
Mm-hmm. And that one was nice.
Gotta be glad to see that only 1 hit and get the evade. So Death Rain lives to fight another day.
The interesting thing is he also is not at 1 health because he has a loose stabilizer. So now he can do whatever he wants on his dial.
I'm allowed to throw the proton bomb as well.
Yeah, and you're allowed to stop.
Yep.
It opens up the stop. But also, you can take that damage off the proton bomb without necessarily sort of automatically doing so. Yeah, absolutely. That 1 extra health is huge. And this final guy just has a range 3 shot into the Grand Inquisitor, who has not spent any force, so it's not.
Oh no, he's on 0 force.
Oh, is he? Oh, because he spent to attack.
Yes.
Been down rolls 2 hits, but 2 natural evades there from the Grand Inquisitor.
Yeah, lucky boy gets out of it.
And we are on to the next round. So, Lloyd, let's get some ill-informed opinions about what should happen next, and then we'll ask the experts. From Oli's point of view, what's your plan here? If you're in Oli's situation, what are you going to go for?
So I think actually Paul has made it much easier for me by pointing out the loose stabilizer 2 health combination. Having the stop available to you means that the front wiki, or front Ozitog number 1, I think it is, is almost definitely taking some form of fire. So you've still got obviously barrage rockets if you focus. You've still got advanced protons if it comes close enough. So I do really like that combination. You accept the Death Rain is definitely dead, but you try and chain him for the best hit he can do. So I feel like, again, the 180 arcs from the Ozitog makes some really interesting here, because with anything with a front-facing arc, you feel like some of them at least would have to be banking towards where Death Rain is. But with that 180, they can almost all just 1 forward, and kind of keep those arcs wide and threaten Whisper if she tries to come around. So, as much as you accept Bethrin is going to die this turn, you're going to lose a chunk of points and be a long way behind. I still don't think Whisper is in a place where she can easily turn in. Knowing you're about to lose a third of your ship, I think Whisper still has to decloak forward and kind of run and try and get around somewhere in this sort of area of the board up here, and try and get a flank in a later turn, because she can sort of get around slightly faster than the Wookiees can for the most part, unless they want to barrel roll. And the same with the Grand Inquisitor. I feel like this turn still needs to be a bit cautious, and I would be considering something like a 3-bank up this way and coming around and trying to get them behind. Because now, I mean, what are we in turn 6? How many rounds is this game? Is it 12 or 14?
Yeah, this is a 12-round game.
Yeah, so you've not got a huge amount of time, but you can't afford to get off any more points, because you're about to lose one of your heavy hitters. And Grand Inquisitor can score points for you, but it's going to take a while to do so. So yeah, I think Whisper just has to stay safe this turn. It's his main concern for me. And you try and get whatever credit you can out of Death Ray.
Ollie, is that your thought, or are you thinking you need to be a bit more aggressive with Grand or Whisper?
So, whilst you make a good point with the points, in terms of you can't afford to lose any points, you also can't afford to be defensive here. The way that you win this game is by getting enough Wookiees off the board quickly enough for your ships to be able to survive in the end game. If there's still 4 Wookiees running around, then you're just dead. As soon as they decide to turn their attention towards Whisper, she doesn't have anywhere to go. So whilst you're correct that I can't come in hard with Whisper here because the Wookiees are a threat, I can't afford to just go away. If I spend another turn without Whisper shooting, I've just lost the game. Just through the fact that they have too much hull, you just can't kill them quickly enough. So because of that, I've dialed in a 5 forwards with the Grand Inquisitor here. He needs to get involved. I was actually really, really worried because, as you were saying with the 180 arcs, if I was using the Wookiees here, every single Wookiee would do a 1-bank to the left.
Yeah, that's what I would have done as well, I think.
And for that reason, I can't decloak Whisper over here. It just can't happen. Because if I decloak 3 hard, I will end up there, which is literally in front of every single Wookiee being shot at range 1. Whisper just explodes. Because Death Rain's only on 2 hull here, Paul doesn't have to try and kill him. Just a couple of shots will kill him. So he can actually now just switch his attention to the real threat and Whisper. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I was reasonably certain that he was just going to tank the bomb. So Death Rain is throwing a proton here. There is no argument with that. But because I was expecting him to turn towards Whisper, I've actually gone a lot more aggressive with Death Rain than dialing the stop, because my thinking was, well, this guy isn't going to hang around. He might even turn away from the bomb, and I want to get an advanced proton into him. And this is where I didn't read the card, Luke. So if you read Zeb, it says primary weapon only. I thought Zeb was any weapon, so I could use the protons even if it hit me. So I was fairly happy with dialing in a faster move with Death Rain, thinking that, oh, if he comes this way, I'll just crash into him and shoot the advanced protons anyway, and that's 1 Wookiee down.
Well, feels bad.
Yeah, so that was my thinking at this point.
This is 3 times now we've gotten something wrong in this list, right? I'd forgotten the Wookiees could swap. Ollie and I had forgotten the Wookiees could barrel roll. And Ollie has misread or misremembered Zeb. So yeah.
Do you know the real problem is that I've been flying Zeb for the last 2 weeks on a ghost, absolutely. So I really don't have an excuse.
It's the difference between the way you remember it, right, versus the way it's written.
Yeah, and I think actually what I would have done is if I hadn't been flying Zeb, I would have just read the card and it would have been fine.
Yeah, because you tell yourself it's fine, you can just shoot to range 0.
I'm really curious what Paul was thinking on this turn.
Okay, so what I was thinking is that Death Rain's going to do a stop. I was 100% in on, yep, Death Rain's going to stop. But in case Death Rain doesn't, then KD1 is going to try to block it and do cool Zeb tricks. I really also was thinking strongly about having KD4 go first, do a 1 forward, bump KD2. KD2 bumps KD1 with a 1 forward, and they hang out back there. They don't get bombed. And KD1 and KD3 accept that they're getting shot or getting bombed and all the awful things are happening. But I didn't want to just have naked dice against to try to plink Death Rain, because again I was assuming Death Rain was going to stop, and KD4 was already out of range of Death Rain last round, so I was like, no, I gotta move KD4 in so that I can get shots just in case Death Rain gets lucky, and then start moving towards Threatening Whisper. So I kind of did it half and half, where my people started Threatening Whisper, but also wanted to make sure Death Rain 100% died. And meanwhile, Sabine is just out. She's like, no, I don't want any part of this proton bomb. I'm leaving. So
let's go ahead and see that play out. Yeah, I think the 5 forward kind of only really makes sense at all, doesn't it? If the bump is going to save you. But as Lloyd said, those kind of misunderstandings of cards that you don't see a lot, or that you've kind of half read once and then assumed that you know what they do, it is quite easy to do. So proton bomb there in a nice position. Obviously, the 5 straightforward does mean you're gonna take that. I don't think you've been bumped back far enough, although it does look close-ish. But probably going to get a damage onto all of the Azatuks, which is nice. And I think a nice aggressive move there with Grand. Kind of coming in, he's going to be able to do some damage. He's still not taking a lot of fire. And as you said, Ollie, whilst it's a scary list to approach, you know, with Death Rain being, very likely to die this round, you can't waste too many turns. You need to kill 2 Azatuks. They can start reinforcing if they want to. As soon as Paul gets 70 points ahead in this game, you start to be in real trouble.
Yeah, for sure. And this was a satisfying bomb.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, KD3 was trying to, in case you did go a left decloak with Whisper, was basically moving in to just block that and just get in your way. But yeah, you did the right move of going forward.
Yeah, I was happy with Whisper's positioning here. It's just a shame that this is one of the only problems that I have with Vassal, is this is a really difficult angle to judge with Whisper right now, with Whisper to KD1.
As in to see if she has arc on it.
Yeah, it's because the line on Vassal isn't exactly down the line.
Yes.
It's a little bit wider. It's really difficult to do.
Yeah, the printed lines are wider than the actual arc, aren't they?
Yeah.
So we'll see the crits coming in here. This is a panicked pilot, and is that onto Death Rain?
That's onto Death Rain. Yeah, it was, as long as it wasn't a blinded or a direct, we were absolutely fine. I was expecting someone to properly block Death Rain, so that's why I was happy with dialing the 3. I wasn't really expecting to get close enough to my own bomb.
And then the Kashyyyk defender there takes a loose stabilizer. Not irrelevant. He's not pointing in a nice direction to want to be going straight forward any turns.
Loose stabilizer is basically direct hit against him, because it's not like I'm gonna fix it. I don't have time for that.
No, it's 2 damage. It's fine. You accept it. It isn't a weapons failure or something else. So.
And yeah, again, worth noting that it fixes itself if you take the damage.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is, in this situation, it is essentially direct. Also worth noting that the Grand Inquisitor didn't want to get any. This is the reason I barreled backwards. I didn't want to be close enough to be bumped by 4 if he stopped next turn.
That makes sense, giving yourself the space next turn. And again, that's kind of something for the newer players. Those small decisions and kind of playing for the next turn. It's really easy to get carried away, have your natural range 1 shot, and just take your offensive tokens. But taking a moment, almost, I think we've said it before on the channel, before you make any decision, just take a moment to think about the next turn, think about what the game plan is overall, and kind of small things like that, giving yourself the space, make a huge difference. So Grand again, spending the force to get his 3 dice, 2 hits rolled, re-rolls with the target lock that he now remembers he's got. It's a hit crit. Obviously keeping it for this turn when there's no shields, and that crit is more valuable. And KD4 rolling the 1 there and spending to take a hit and a crit. A blinded pilot. So good decision to spend, wasn't going to be able to use it anyway. But problematic potentially problematic. Does open up the possibility of him just rolling around taking reinforce for the rest of the game, or obviously has the ability to fix that if he needs to. Gets the opportunity.
Yeah, so this is where I make my second big mistake of the game. I should have just I was 90% sure that I had the range to get KD1 with Whisper, but I was also aware I was taking 2 shots because realistically Death Rain is dying from KD2 and KD4 shooting him, and then Paul will shoot Whisper with the front 2 Azatuks. So knowing I've got 2 shots coming into me with focus mods, I'm probably not going to be able to kill this guy with a single shot from Death Rain. I should have tried to kill him KD1 with Whisper and just taken the gamble. But if I don't, and if I don't hit anything with Whisper, I don't get my second evade this turn, and I'm in real trouble in terms of taking damage. Because Whisper taking 2 shots, sitting on 2 evades and a force is pretty good. So I decided that I was going to shoot a 1 agility ship in KD3 to make sure I got my evade, and make sure I got the shot just in case it was slightly off the arc with KD1. But as you can see, it's clearly in by country miles. So
yeah, it feels like it's a tiny margin, right? But it's another one of those that's starting to add up a little bit. And it's just slipping away a little bit.
Yeah. And then the other one here is also, I think I reroll into a single eyeball. So not being able to guarantee the evade and having to spend the force as well. Because yeah, if I don't spend that force, I don't get the free evade for sure. And as you can see here, Paul does roll the focus, so would have denied me an evade token.
Yeah, and so the combination of maybe slightly misjudging the target priority, but certainly being a bit unlucky there with that attack roll, as you say, having to spend more tokens than you want. But you do get the damage through, and you do get your free evade.
Mm-hmm.
So sat there with no force, but 2 evades, and what's probably going to be, as you say, 2 incoming shots. Zeb on the Azatuks, I'm just realizing, is horrendous given their arc.
Yeah, it's really good.
Thinking that Death Rain have got the perfect spot, getting the shot and not getting shot back, but clearly that is not correct.
This is the point where I realize I can't use the advanced proton, and I'm sad.
Yeah.
So at this point, are you thinking primary into that ship, or are you looking at barrage into
No. Primary into take off the ship that's damaged, maybe even get a direct hit. Unfortunately, I reroll a blank into a blank.
And so 2 focuses in a blank. You spend the lock, as you say, and reroll into the blank. But spend those focuses anyway. That 1 focus token is not going to keep you alive. And another natural evade from KD1, who does not want to die today.
Nope. Only takes a single.
Takes another single damage.
So yeah, like realistically, it would have been fairly easy to put 4 damage into that ship with 2 focus target lock shots that I had coming in. If I'd have shot him properly with both, then he probably would have gone down. But that was my fault and target priority. Whilst I got a little bit unlucky, if you don't shoot the right ships, you're not going to win.
And so Sabine, no shot there, and we're on to the Azatuks.
Yeah.
It looks like you're starting off with 2. Is there an argument that you should have taken the unmodded shot with 4 into Death Rain, see if you get the kill, and then you potentially have that range 1 on Sabine if you're going to get greedy? It doesn't really...
friendly.
Sabine's my ship. I'm not shooting her.
Keep that one in. Don't cut that.
Yeah, KD2's only shot is on Death Rain, so that's why you start with her. KD4,
potentially has Whisper.
Yeah, maybe Whisper, we nudge the board and Whisper gets in range. I don't know.
Just flip the table. It's fine.
So starting off with KD2 here. Nice roll, hit, crit, and a focus. No reason to not spend the focus, and that is a dead Death Rain.
I think, again, having not seen Azatuks on the table very much, or Trandoshan Slavers, you forget how much coverage that arc has until you really see it, don't you? When you see Paul pull up those fire arcs, that is a huge amount of coverage.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrendous. KD4 is out of range here, and so we start with KD1, who, no other ship is getting this shot. Rolls really nicely, hit, crit, and a focus. Didn't spend his focus because of a natural evade. So that is first shot into Whisper. 3 hits coming in. 3 agility because of range. Oof, and a bad roll.
I would have really enjoyed that force there.
Yeah, really missing the force. And having to spend both here to not take the crit?
You cannot spend both. If I don't decloak next turn, then I die.
And actually, doesn't take the crit anyway because that's the 2 shields by the 1 spend. So that makes sense.
Yeah, so I have to only spend one evade here because like Paul's a good enough player that if I spend both evades, Whisper just doesn't get out of that. She just explodes.
And then the follow-up range 2 shot here. Just the one hit and no mods on that.
Yeah, you ended up taking slightly more. The expected was 1.2, by the way. I ran it while we were talking about it. And so you ended up taking 2 damage, which is a smidge more than the 1.2 expected, but yeah.
Didn't spend that second evade, so are able to recloak and give yourself some options for next turn. Obviously, a good turn for you, Paul. Didn't actually take all that much damage, although did take a little bit from the bombs. We've been seeing you almost exclusively focus with the Azatux. Is there a point at which the reinforce becomes an option, or do you think that that's a kind of a trap with this list, and you need that kind of offensive mod for it to do anything?
If continuing to press the attack just means you're going to lose your guy via like initiative kill, then run away and reinforce and force him to chase him down and actually have to kill him. Like KD4, if KD4 just went like a 1 forward and focus, then Whisper and Grand Inquisitor just kill him. And I go, oh, that felt dumb. So instead, KD4 is running away, and if you want to kill him, you gotta dedicate yourself to killing him. And meanwhile, there's a bunch of other Wookiees there to punish you for dedicating yourself to killing them. So
yeah, it's only 21 points you're protecting, but it's 21 points that at the moment you haven't given up, and so making your opponent have to really work for those points just drags the game out and keeps it in your favour.
For the record as well, with the board state here, absolutely my plan to murder KD4. Obviously, Grand is right behind him. Whisper's best safe spot, if you like, is actually as close to the Azatux as possible. So I'm looking to land her pretty much slap bang in the middle of them, and hoping I can initiative kill one and dodge most of the other arcs. Whilst I would love to go for KD1 here, I also forgot that he had Zeb at this point. So I was worried about him slamming it, because Paul's obviously just taking the stabilizer hit here. He's just going to slam around this rock with a turn. I was worried that the decloak towards him hard 1 would crash, forgetting about the fact that that's actually a good thing, and I could probably still kill him. But anyway.
So we got those moves coming in. We got the decloak forward, as I was describing. Attack being the best form of defense here.
Mm-hmm.
KD1 is indeed taking a hit, getting rid of his loose stabilizer and coming around that corner. KD3 just swinging around. Man, the 180 arc.
Yeah, it's super good.
It's
super good.
A ship that's basically no play suddenly seems like incredible value.
Sabine's maneuverability coming into play there, being able to kind of almost flip 180 there.
Yeah, doing 135-degree turns with Sabine just feels dirty. It's good. It's
really good.
Yeah, and you've gone in one turn from sort of looking slightly out of position to actually being in a position now to really threaten Grand Inquisitor, make him think twice about spending Paul.
And this was a really big one with Sabine. I was actually expecting Paul to barrel roll on hard 2, which is why I didn't do the 1 bank to get arc on KD4 here, which could have meant that I could have killed him this turn. But because there was the Sabine threat for the block, I decided to do the 2 forwards as the safe move. And it means that I didn't have a good shot on him this turn.
Yeah, and it's the unseen value of pieces like Sabine and cards like Intimidation, isn't it? It's almost not about the turn where you get the block and reduce the agility by 1. It's about the effect it has on your opponent's play kind of throughout the game.
Yeah, it's stopping me from doing the correct moves on a couple of turns here.
And as we said, from Paul's point of view, to get that, you need Sabine to be in that tight in position. And again, to kind of reiterate, the ability to have had Sabine in position to threaten those blocks without ever really being at risk, I think has been really impressive. So Whisper here, presumably firing into KD4, seeing if he can get the job done on his own. Ooh, when he's going to give it a try. That's 3 hits and a focus. Spends the force, I presume, to add the crit. And then...
Yeah, I'm hoping for the direct hit.
Taking 3, the reinforce kind of coming into play there. And as you say, the direct hit here will kill. Sort of slight disappointment in your voice there suggests that maybe it doesn't happen, and we get a hull breach.
The most useful crit on one hull.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, again, we mentioned it already, but look at the value there of that
Yeah,
And then
it's good.
Springbook, right? It has kept that as alive.
And then Inquisitor only one shot, long range into a pretty healthy still KD3, but a good roll, hit crit. Attack dice have been pretty reasonable, barring that one Whisper roll. But a good defense roll here, and maybe spend the focus here. I think I'd certainly consider it. Yeah, you go ahead and
It doesn't
spend
have range on Whisper, right? So you spend it.
and takes another blinded pilot. Some of these Wookiees need an optician, I think.
It's all the fur it gets in their eyes.
Cool. And then we're down to the rebel shots. Paul, we've been seeing you kind of opting really to spend the tokens on defense when you get the opportunity. Is that particular to this matchup, kind of the state, or is that something you tend to do kind of in general?
It depends a lot on if I'm winning or not. If I'm winning, then I will more likely spend tokens on defense to keep alive. And also it depends on how good my shots are. I didn't like at this point it's a range 3 shot at a Grand Inquisitor from that guy. Sure, spend it on defense, whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And Sabine coming in here with the hit focus, has the focus of spend, not taking any incoming fire. But the Inquisitor rolls plenty well enough and doesn't take anything there. Does spend his focus, so maybe it's slightly more risk from this as a tuck shot and trying his best.
Blind Wookiees
really
are
mind
great.
about the hair in his
Yeah,
eye.
as soon as I blinded them, they started shooting really well.
And Inky actually here rolling no natural evades, and I'm not sure how much force you've got left here. It doesn't
zero.
look like any.
Yeah. So that was 3 hits at range 3, so that one stung.
Yeah, and that's a big swing, right? All of a sudden from you're already down in the game, but your position, you've kind of sorted your positioning out a bit. It was looking like you'd got out of that turn without too much trouble, and then the unmodded range 3 shot into the Inquisitor.
It's one of the reasons why Ace's games against Beef looks so one-sided either way, because either you get the cascade effect of you manage to kill the rebel ships quickly enough, and therefore you just win because you have enough shots, or you have the reverse where you don't get enough off quickly enough, and therefore there's just too many shots coming in and the aces just melt, as you can see happening.
And we've got a couple more shots still to come in here. So KD1, 2 health, having taken that damage, but got himself the shot on Whisper. Whisper sitting there on 2 evades. So again, unlucky to take a lot of damage, but going to be taking some because hit crit natural without any mods, and 2 agility and 2 evades. Ooh, Oli, blank out from Whisper.
This turn really hurt. I mean, I deserved it for where Whisper was. I deserved it from where Grand Inquisitor was. Like I should have dialed in to make sure I killed KD4 here. It was unfortunate to lose Whisper this turn, but sorry, spoilers.
Well, not too much of a spoiler. So presumably here spending both evades, are you going to risk taking
here? I think I spent both. Yeah.
Yeah. Still alive, but and on 2 health, has a chance, but taking another range 2 shot here, another hit, and the focus which is spent. That is a dead Whisper.
Wow. Yeah, the expected was only like 1.3, and so doing 3 was really good for me. I was very happy with that.
Yeah, I was feeling okay, like not having done the 3 bank, because if I did the 3 bank, I was risking overshooting KD4, and I didn't want to do that. So I was expecting to get shot twice with Whisper that turn, but again, I was thinking, right, I'm going to have 2 evades. I hopefully have the force. It's okay. Like I'll take a damage, but if I get a Wookiee off the board and take a damage, then that's acceptable. And that was just like, that hurt.
It is worth pointing out, though, that again this turn, despite all of Paul's ships moving first, all but 1 have got a shot.
And this is what's going to happen, is that eventually, you carry on getting shots, you're gonna do damage. And this is the thing, as I was saying earlier, Aces versus Swarm, you have to get aggressive to get a couple off fast, and I didn't do that with Death Rain, and therefore I lost the game.
So, as you say, the game is essentially done and dusted here. We'll click through the last few turns and watch Paul attempt to kind of clean up and score those final few points, but I think this is a good opportunity to talk more broadly about the game, and maybe if we start off with that last turn,
you chose aggression and certainly got a bit unlucky to take as much damage as you did. But do you think, in hindsight, there was the option to be more cagey and perhaps you had time to reposition for a couple of turns before turning back in?
I'm actually like there's a reason that I pointed out those two big mistakes. One was not K-turning Death Rain. The other was not shooting that Wookiee with Whisper. Something that's important to note is that Wookiee that I didn't kill basically got the kill shot on Whisper. He was the one that did the like double blank. He made me spend both of 8 tokens, right?
Yep.
If I'd have shot that Wookiee with Whisper when I should have done, taken him off the board, then that would have meant I was now in a position to win the game. As well as that, if I'd have dialed back a couple of turns earlier, if Death Rain had engaged properly, he would have killed that Wookiee, which meant that the Inquisitor and Whisper could have done the same thing to a second Wookiee, and suddenly you've got a 3 health Whisper and a fully healthy Inquisitor against 2 Wookiees and Sabine, right?
Yeah, and that's a much more respectable proposition. So Inquisitor here, still trying. Let's got into range 1. Taking a few shots, maybe having dodged the arc of number 3, not quite sure, but certainly just having to presumably just cross his fingers and hope that magic happens. Gets double crit, but the Wookiee continues to roll paint, or has to spend his focus token. So Paul presumably had stern words with him after that. That's not the natural evade you expect, and takes a crit here. Direct hit would be helpful.
This is still that same Wookiee that he's been like, I'm trying to kill this Wookiee.
It's the single one. Like, if you'll notice how I've really done well at spreading all my firepower here.
And all my Wookiees have some damage. Yeah.
He's now down to 1 health. Apologies for the stream. I think I missed the loose stabilizer damage on the overlay there. He is now down to 1 health and, in fact, takes another loose stabilizer this turn.
Also worth noting, Sabine killed the Grand Inquisitor.
Yeah, the first Grand Inquisitor died at the first available opportunity, man.
The Grand Inquisitor got shot twice.
Yep.
At range 3
twice.
both times. Died.
But yeah, Paul, so with the list, what were this is the first time you put it on the table, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so is a list you've been sticking with, I think. I mean, I've seen your Vassal game today, so.
Yeah, so I played it for the second time today. I beat Bartos in League, so that was a much closer game. I only won by like 30 points, so it was like the last roll of the game that I did enough damage to half one of his ships to get the win. So that was, I mean, the list is doing really well.
It feels like some pretty good pedigree for 2 outings, right? To be an Oli and Bartosz with it seems, So I take it, is that a list you're interested in sticking with?
Like if there was a world to go to, or which I'm kind of assuming there's not going to be.
Yeah. And we can do this because it works both ways. So Oli, you obviously, I'll ask you the question. You have an invite to Worlds?
I apparently have a ticket and a hotel, but
this is not making the edit.
Yeah, you know where it's going. Paul, you presumably, good Paul, you have an invite to Worlds.
Yeah, I've an invite permanently, same as Oli.
I also have an invite to Worlds. Paul, do you have an invite to Worlds?
No, I do not. Thank you very much for that.
As I Paul, your list is 200 points. Obviously, you've not got much scope to play with there, but having played it a couple of times now, are there any changes you would make to it, or does it feel pretty set?
No, there's 0 changes I would make to this list. I mean, I keep thinking about the Sabine portion of it because she's cool and super fun to fly around. But I mean, barring this, like when she killed the Grand Inquisitor here, she doesn't do a ton, but she's so cheap that I don't know if there's anything that I could do better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like 31 points.
As your opponent, it was interesting because normally what happens is when I have a look at a list, I immediately go and see if I can build it myself and make it any better. I completely agree with you in terms of I don't think there's anything else better. The only 2 things that I could fit in that slot that I like the look of is Zeb in the normal attack shuttle to give another 3 dice gun, or like an RZ1 with intimidation as well. I've played a lot of pre-position aces before, and the fact that I can see how many different places that little TIE fighter can be, it just reduces my options for all of my planning so much that even if she never blocks a ship for the entire game, she is such a useful piece.
Yeah, you just always have to account for it.
The other thing I've seen in that slot in this list is AP5, but I agree with both Paul and Ollie. I think AP5 gives an extra mod to an Azatak. Doesn't have a mod themselves for their attack, and is an easy source of points for your opponent in a way that Sabine just isn't. Sabine's just that much more maneuverable, better able to shrug off shots at range, certainly through asteroids as we saw in this game, and is a bigger headache. That kind of intimidation combined with her ability is a real issue. So yeah, I think that this list is about as good as it's going to get. I wonder if there's scope for 3 Azataks and a kind of bigger 4th ship, but I've been looking at it and I can't really find anything that I think would fly nicely with them.
I was going to say, I think that this is it's an interesting comparison in between my list building and Paul's list building, because as this game was kind of going on, we were also having a chat about the First Order, and the idea that you can fit the First Order provocateurs, you can fit 4 of those with Scorch, which is sort of, I've seen Paul run that as a list, whereas I'd put 3 of them with Kylo. I think that's like, I prefer having the ace piece in there, whereas I think Paul is very much of let's just lob all of this efficiency in a list and see what happens.
More arcs is more better. Yeah. I love arcs. Just get more firing arcs in there.
And so that's what was going to be my question. Nicely preempted, Ollie. Of the other new stuff, we'll start with, we talked about that TIE Baron list. Is there anything else that you like as much as this, or is this kind of it in your mind as far as the new points are concerned so far?
So for League, I just give my opponents the choice of if they want to do extended or hyperspace. Anyone in League who chooses extended is getting this list. There's no list that I see in extended that I like flying more. It is everything I like in a list. Ships that have trouble dying. I don't have to rack my brain for all these movement tricks or anything like double reposition, fragile aces stuff. I'm terrible at those. Yeah, I would love to play this at a tournament or something, because you can go through the whole day and you're not drained at the end of the day. I like everything about this list. So it's going to be my extended list for a while, until it used to be, I don't even remember, 215 points or something like that before they knocked all the points down.
Yeah, it's pretty big change.
Yeah, so this will be that. For hyperspace, I've been looking at that provocateur list that we were talking. I've been trying out the Nantex. You could do some neat things with Nantexes with gravitic deflections, and still get 8 ships. I've seen people talking about online flying Grievous and 4 Nantexes, I think. It's some ridiculous number of Nantexes that you could squeeze in, and General Grievous as the ace. So that's a really strange, interesting list, but I don't own that many Nantexes, so I wouldn't want to even practice flying that.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think that we were talking about that on the 186th podcast on the latest episode, as to whether the Nantexes were viable without Ensnare, and there is a points cost that they are, aren't there? But I think, as I said on the podcast, I'm not sure if they're there yet.
They're pretty close. Obviously the name Nantexes are garbage. You can throw them all away. This is just the Arena Ace and the Hive Guard. They're pretty good. I've got a list that I'm probably gonna try tomorrow, I think. That's 2 Arena Aces with gravitic deflection and treacherous, and 6 drones with struts. So that'll be interesting to try out, and I'll see how that works out. But yeah, in hyperspace, I'm going to try a couple different things with Nantexes. Maybe every now and again go back to the 4 provocateurs and something. I'm still not sure if Scorch is the right something, but he probably is.
Yeah, he's just such good value, right?
Yeah.
And then Ollie, I suppose this sort of similar question: has this kind of result put you off this variation of this list, or are you kind of where are you going these days with this build?
I wasn't really honestly, the only reason I put Death Rain in this list because I was worried that Paul would put a droid list up, and I knew that I could fly Whisper and Grand Crystal pretty well. So as it was really new into the points changes, it was something safe. I'm super excited about First Order, but I'm also really enjoying Rebels right now. The Ghost has me quite excited, as does the Falcon. I haven't flown the Falcon in a while, and I'm liking the idea that you can fly Falcons like properly competitively again. So I think more hyperspace, but yeah, trying out the Ghost and the Falcon in hyperspace would be cool.
Yeah, with all those upgrade slots, it feels like there's got to be something there, hasn't there?
And yeah, I think I'm trying to play around with different things before I end up just all inning on the TIE BA, the basic ones, because it feels similar to the Four Fangs, right? You've got an ace, you've got 3 really efficient mini ships that can pretend to be aces. It's kind of my jam. I like it.
Yeah, on the time that I flew the 4 provocateurs and Scorch, all the provocateurs went after my opponent's entire list because he brought a droid swarm. And having 4 double reposition aces
So
against, you're just like, okay, you're like half your list is just not getting shots every turn.
Yep. And then when you want to, you just go, cool, well, everyone's going to take a focus target lock, and I guess 3 of your ships are dead.
And so to wrap up on this game, something we like to do on the channel, Paul, any kind of lessons learned from this game? Obviously, a list you're considering taking going forwards. Things you change or things you thought worked well and you're happy with?
I'm still trying to figure out a good opening with the list. I mean, this worked fine, but you got to have more than just like the one opening of like, okay, my guys go forward towards you and are just this.
Do you? Oh, that's obviously where I'm going wrong.
Maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to be this giant wall of Wookiee fur coming at your opponents. But like, I'm trying to think of a good way to maybe. It wouldn't work against this list because it's so AC maneuverable, but maybe a way to kind of split them into 2 different pairs of Wookiees, and like Sabine flying off on some flank to kind of go in from different directions.
Yeah, give you those solutions for kind of stranger matchups.
Yeah.
And Oli, obviously, we talked about the specifics, but in general, any kind of take homes, learning points from the game?
Yeah, so this is something because I'm doing my Top Gun series at the moment on my own channel. The reason I feel I lost this one is because I lost track of what I needed the end game to look like, which is I need to burn 2 Wookiees as soon as possible. And I started trying to get clever with escaping them and dodging, whereas realistically, I'm going to lose Death Rain, so I need to kill 2 Wookiees once Death Rain is dead. How do you set up a board state that does that? That's the problem I needed to solve going into the game. And then I got distracted by the fact that, I've got this trajectory simulator thing that I can throw bombs at people. Yeah, that's what I let myself get distracted by. So I think the real thing that I need to take away from this is that flying was good, deployment was good, but make sure that you keep in your head what you need that end game to look like and how you're going to get there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's so often when you come away from a bad game, or I find myself if I come away from a bad game, time and time again with all that effort, and I would have been better off jousting. Had you stuck to the plan at the beginning and just thrown the Punisher in, it would have done more damage. You would have got more for that Punisher, and you'd have been in a much better situation in the game. So maybe kind of having that clear plan and then trying to execute it as simply as possible, not getting too clever.
Yeah.
So, Lloyd, any final thoughts from you?
One, obviously, Ollie said this is the first time we put this list on the table. It runs at 198 points. I'd be very tempted to spend 1 more point for delayed fuses, just to give Death Rain a bit more flexibility.
Yeah, that would have been really good. And had I spotted that before the game, it would have been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I figured it was probably just because it's the first time putting it on the table for sure. And then second thing, I think probably I'll go back and watch this video and I'll mute myself and just watch Paul's flying to keep these Aussie Tucks in formation, because it's so understated, but it's such a beautiful job of keeping them in a position where every turn they have the opportunity to get to where they need to be every time.
Yeah, and actually, you take the words right out of my mouth. Paul was being self-deprecating a few minutes ago and saying, more arcs are better, just roll round, it's all okay. But I predict that the vast majority of players taking this list are not going to do such a nice job. And the thing to do, exactly as you say, is to go and look at it. And it's the small differences in manoeuvres each turn, small choices early game are what led to turn after turn, multiple arcs being in the right place. Obviously, 180 degrees makes it easier, but it is not quite as easy to do as Paul made it sound.
Yeah, I mean, we've got two of the most famous and sort of successful X-Wing players on here, plus you and I, Paul. But I think if we took the names off this and showed it to most people, people would recognise very clearly this is two very, very good players who know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really nice place to end. So thank you ever so much to both Oli and Paul for coming on. Thanks to Lloyd, and thanks to everyone for watching, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thanks for the game, Paul.